Hey, it's your boy KV here, and today I'm going to be giving you a 3-minute long guide on the KV-13 medium tank prototype. This tank series will be a series of short videos that will give you very basic information about individual tanks. If you find a specific tank interesting, I would advise that you go out and do your own research on it. The KV-13 was an attempt by the Soviet Union to make a universal medium/heavy tank for the Soviet Army. The Soviets had found that their KV-1 heavy tanks were becoming less and less efficient at their jobs, and that despite bringing heavy armor to the battlefield, their speed was highly inadequate, and as such a requirement for a faster tank came up. By mid-1942, the first initial designs for the KV-13 tank prototype came about. These tanks were to include the KV-1 ZIS-5 tank cannon, 120mm of frontal hull armor, and the same speed as a T-34, all the while weighing roughly 38 tons. By mid-1943, the first initial tank prototypes of the KV-13 were made. The first one was armed with a ZIS-5 76mm anti-tank cannon, while the other was armed with a 122mm U-11 howitzer. Both tanks had the estimated length of 6.6 meters and a width of 2.8 meters, all the while having a height of 2.5 meters. The tank was powered by a V12 liquid-cooled diesel-fueled engine developing 600 horsepower, coupled to a mechanical transmission system. With this power plant, the KV-13 could go roughly the same speed as a T-34. But, ultimately, despite meeting its requirements, the Soviet military decided that they did not want the KV-13, as earlier on in 1942, the first Tiger I tanks entered the battlefield, and the Soviet Army wanted something that was much more of a dedicated heavy tank instead of a universal super medium tank like the KV-13. Ultimately, the KV-13 tank series would end up being a failure, with only 2 tank prototypes being produced. But this would not be the end of the KV-13, as the development that was put into the KV-13 would be used on the IS-1 heavy tank, which would end up going into production as the Joseph Stalin I. This tank would eventually be upgraded into the IS-2, which was arguably one of the Soviet Union's best heavy tanks of the Second World War. One would serve as the Soviet Union's base heavy tank for the next 20-ish years, eventually ending off with the T-10M heavy tank that was made during the 1950s.